Ba-dum, bum, bum.
Windy pig, oh, windy, 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 windy pig.
So we're back on the bench with all the bits. Let's got to keep that separate. That's the chain off it. That seems to be in good enough nick. No stuck links. That's the big flywheel for turning the the engine sort of revs into going forward juice. And that sprocket looks good. The bearing there feels pretty good, although a bit dry. So I'll give that a good old wedge of grease before we put it back there. But this is the bit I'm concerned about. So this doesn't feel right at all. It's just sort of. This is another one. This is off it's a different engine. Well, they're the same engine, but a different motorcycle, if that makes sense. On the BSA Aerial 3, which runs the same engine, instead of the clutch running a belt which runs the drive, this one runs a tooth belt which runs the drive and it also runs a fan for engine cooling. And as you can see, it's got a much shallower pan. There's no spring in here. It's constant. It's constant. It's fed to the other side basically. What are the bits for it? Probably not. But yeah, it's basically almost opposite. So this one, the spring sits in this cup and it sits the opposite way around. So the cup sits all in this. It's the same engine but a different clutch basically. And I was hoping that they might share a bearing because this came out of a running bike, and I was given it by a bloke in the aerial club, but it doesn't seem to be the same bearing. Whereas this is one long needle roller bearing. This appears to be some sort of slightly odd sort of I don't know if it's a clutch or one-way drive or something, but it's not a bearing. And then a small, quite thin, quite short needle roller bearing, and then another second, what feels like a clutch on the outside again, or a single directional, like Sprague clutch thing. So that's no good to me. It feels like everything's skating over, so it doesn't feel like these are moving very well, these rollers in here. So I'm going to give it a spray of PTFE. Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to give it a clean with a brush. Fingers crossed it might come back to life if I bring a bit of grease in it. It doesn't seem to have made it any better. It's made it worse, in fact. Yeah, it's a shame, really. But on the upside, if this is spinning freely, and the rear wheel is spinning freely, which we'll have a look at in a minute when I get back out the bike, then there's a good chance that the only problem is this one single needle roller bearing, if it is a problem. Like, this feels lovely and smooth. Just spins on its own. Whereas this one, I know it's a bit lighter, so it's got less inertia to it, but you spin it on those bearings and it just sort of just doesn't feel very nice. But I've got some moly grease, so we're going to grease them up and put it all back together. So I will do that without you, because you don't know what to put it back together, you just sort of take it apart. And we'll try it again, a bit greased up, a bit back together, and we'll also have a look at the rear wheel. See you in a moment. Okay, we are going to put this back together. I thought I would show you after all. I did say I wouldn't. But it's interesting, I guess. So I've just packed this full of grease. Really got some good bearing grease in there, smushed into all the rollers, so that can go back on. I've also put some grease on the shaft here, just as it goes in. No jokes about greasing shafts here, please. And then I'm just going to make sure it's wiped off, because I don't want to get grease on clutch faces, I'm sure you can understand why. Just make sure that's nice and clean. And then this is an important bit. So this is one of the things you've got to remember. There's usually an order to put these things in, especially when you've got things like Belleville washers. This one is a large washer that sits on the very end of the shaft, and that sort of acts like almost like a grease trap. It stops the grease pushing this side of the setup, because you don't want grease getting into your clutch really, because it will just slip everywhere, because grease is all slippery. Hopefully I can see something. Then the Belleville washer goes in like so, and then a small washer on the front. So that then takes up. So that means when you've got the clutch tightened on there, patch tightened on there, it's you've got a bit of tension behind it, so that if there is any sort of run out or anything, or any sort of expansion of things with heat from the clutch, it's all that Belleville washer. It works like a thrust washer basically. Next is inner plate. We've got a brand new one of those fold-over washers on here as well, so that can go on. This is keyed, so that should go on. He says with ease. Yeah, let's get on there. And one thing I've got to do is check if there's a what do you call it? Torque spec for these. Doesn't look like there is. No, clutch hasn't been pulled from the shaft. Yeah, blah blah blah. Nope. So we're just going to do it up. See how we get on. Just do it up to what I've heard referred to as moped tight, which is tight's tight, too tight's fucked, I think is the technical term. But you get a feel for these things over time. Now, the only thing I don't have, which is embarrassing me, is I don't have a proper clutch holding tool for one of these. So we're going to do it the dodgy garage Easter way, which is to say we'll do it wrong, and someone somewhere will tell me that I'm an idiot and a moron and a charlatan. Just fiddly, innit? Come on. Come on. Come on. There we go. It took a minute, didn't it? Right, let's get that little screwdriver I've got. Put that in to stop it all moving. Oh, fucking, I can't put the fuck. It's not a lot better, but it's certainly better than it was. It doesn't spin nicely, does it? But I suppose maybe it's supposed to drag a little bit. Who knows? That sounds right. Just going to nip that up a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Get that in there. There we go. Grease all this up, I reckon, as well. Yeah. Anyway, let's get the clutch back together first. Let's do one job at a time, idiot. So this is interesting. You can see, where's a clean bit of rag? I haven't got a clean bit of rag, have I? Oh, I have. There's a clean bit of rag and a glass of beer. That's the inner friction plate. That's the one that runs on the spring. So you can see that's where the spring sits. You can see that that's inside, but it's never had any spring. It's just one sort of quite solid colour. And if you look, I don't know what it shows in the camera, you can just see where it's taken some paint off there. So when it runs up and engages, you can sort of see these little lines where it's obviously just as it started to engage, and then it goes full engagement. So it just rubs a little bit of that paint off where it runs clean over, or it's not where it's just sort of touching, and then it drags outwards. Now I don't know if this is some sort of special paint for friction. The other one I had doesn't have that on the back of it, so whether somebody's put some sort of friction paint on the back of it, I don't know. And you can see there's some bluing on here, which means it's been running quite hot, but that's probably because I've been just trying to drag my fat ass up a hill, I imagine. Oh, I haven't done that bloody washer, have I? Hang on a minute, lads. Let's do that washer first. Let's do that washer first. Fold that tab over. Sorry, getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Let's fold that tab over. Flatten the tab down, so that means it can't unwind itself when it's all spinny. That doesn't feel a lot better though. Maybe there is just a bit of drag on it, I don't know. Maybe I'm being unnecessarily paranoid about it. But we'll put it all together and see how we go. Maybe it'll never be any good, but this never hurts to take this apart and have a look at it, does it? So, and don't take half an hour. Right, in a pressure plate. This is the cork friction plate. Again, looks in pretty good nick. Some signs of pickup on it where it's obviously caught a little bit bubbling, but nothing untoward. That can go on. Then we want our spring, our rattle plate. Let's stick all this down there. Let's stick all this down here. So the next thing that goes on is our anti-rattle tab. So let's just put this on here. This is just a little sort of spring. This is over one of these little ears, and it just stops the whole thing rattling like a horrible Ducati clutch. Because it is basically a Ducati clutch, because it's a dry clutch. It's basically Ducati. Maybe a little bit slower. You know, close enough. And you've got a spring goes in here. That's the there's all the spring work. Then you've got this goes on top. It should all line up. This is the bloody fiddly bit. It's trying to get this on all together at the same time with spring pusher. There we go. Let's get that on there. Right, let's get a couple of these screws on. Right, got all of that. A washer. What's gone already? Come on, idiot. Little washer. Oh, it's gone again. Fucking idiot. Let's try this one instead. Little washer. Right, I had to take that off again. I didn't get it all lined up properly first time around, so it wasn't tightening down properly. We just got it on again. Just got to get two of these on, and we'll be all right. Okay, the next thing to do is the book specs a millimetre. I think it's half to 1 millimetre between the friction plates and the pressure plate. Friction plate and the two pressure plates. So I'll get some feeler gauges down there, but you've got to make sure it's even as well. So you've got to turn it and measure it. Turn it and measure it. And it looks good to me. I mean, I've done this so many times. To me, by eye, it looks brilliant. I can't see anything particularly wrong with that. And they're all nice and tight. I'm just going to put like a tiny nip on each one just to make sure they're tight enough. Hopefully not enough to change. Just like that. It's a tiny little bit on each one. Just to make sure they're all, it's not they're loose. That looks good to me. I'll show you what I'm doing, hang on. So the gap I'm looking for is the gap here. So this little movement, you see, I don't know how you can see it, there's a gap either side of that plate, that friction plate. That should be half to a millimetre. Now that looks good to me. And if you move it around a bit, roll it around, tight again, still good. And it all looks even. These are all tight. Yeah, they've all got the little crush washers, Belleville washers behind them. So they shouldn't come undone. Yeah, it looks good to me. That's turning nicely. And it's turning without turning the engine over. It doesn't sound like it's dragging anywhere. So that's good. I'm pleased with that. So that's that section done. I'm almost certain then that the oh bloody hell, it's fallen over. That the clutch wasn't the issue. Annoyingly. Or rather, maybe they do just drag. I don't remember it being that bad before. Maybe I'm just forgetting. But I'll put the belt back on. We'll grease up the that spindle and get that that pedal back on, and then we'll put it back on its funny little stand, and I'll take the rear wheel out and show you the rear wheel. We need adjusting up, but that rear wheel is in a bit of a state. It's the cup and cone bearings. But anyway, we'll get to that next video. But that's it for now. I'm going to put all this back together again. Thanks for watching.
Ba-dum, bum, bum.
Windy pig, oh, windy, windy, windy pig.